The Vectrex has a height of 37 centimeters, then it's 25 centimeters wide and 30 centimeters deep. On the front we can see right here the 9-inch black and white vector monitor. Then below here we have the controller, which I'm gonna show you in a minute. On the right side here we have the cartridge slot, and on the back we have right here a brightness knob. Then here's the sticker with the serial number, and the system was manufactured in Hong Kong. And on the top here we have the handle so that we can carry around the system. Now to open, the controller is right now locked in to the system, but to release the controller we have down here a plastic lever, and this lever we have to push down with one hand, and with the other one we can release the controller. I'm gonna disconnect the controller because I want to show you all the stuff which is down here. Here we have the controller port for player 1, controller port for player 2. Here we have the on and off switch, which is also the volume control because it's a knob. Then here we have a reset button and the speaker. Now the controller, the port is a 9-pin port, the same one like the Sega Genesis controllers have, Mega Drive, Master System, Commodore 64, Commodore Amiga, Atari ST. And you can actually connect joysticks and controllers of those systems to the Vectrex, but they will not work since they have a different wiring layout. But it is able to modify Mega Drive controllers, for instance, so that they can actually work on the Vectrex, and you can also find some modified controllers which will work for the Vectrex. Then, like I already mentioned, the joystick of the controller is an actual analog joystick, a self-centering one, and if you buy a system, make sure that it is self-centering, because there are some springs inside that can break, and if this happens then they will not self-center anymore, and it can be very hard to play games with those kinds of controllers, but they still work. And here we have 4 action buttons. I'm gonna connect it again. The Vectrex is also region free, so it doesn't matter which version you have of the Vectrex and which games you get for the system. So it plays US games, PAL Europe games, and also the Japanese games. And the system will always load the cartridge slot first. So if you insert a cartridge of a game or a program, it will load the cartridge first. If no cartridge is inserted into the system, then it will load always the built-in game called Mindstorm. Then, like I also already mentioned, the system is black and white, / the monitor is black and white, but yeah, J. Smith just wanted also to add some color to the system, and he achieved this by using so-called overlays. And this is a method that was also used in arcades. A lot of arcade cabinets also used some overlays, and with the overlay you add some color to the system. Then one other good thing about those overlays is that down below here you have the button layout for each game, and each game came also with an overlay. And to insert an overlay you have down here and also up here of the monitor you have those plastic, let's call them lips, to yeah, so that you can make those overlays stay in place, let's go like that. And you just have to do it like that. And now you have an overlay, you get some color to the system, and it also helps a little bit the look of the Vectrex / with the game. Now it looks a little bit more like in the arcades. And the next thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hook up the system because there's also some things that I wanted to show you. Now the first thing that I'm gonna show you is that when I turn on the system, you will see a boot up screen, and this is very uncommon, especially for a video game system of the early 80s. And you're gonna hear also a noise, this one. This buzzing, humming sound, and this is the boot up screen. And this buzzing sound is characteristic actually for the Vectrex. It's a static that happens because of the CRT reacts to the audio cables of the speaker, and this creates this buzzing sound. Yeah, here. This is the gamepad. I'm gonna show you later on the gameplay in more detail. And here with the overlay we have some blue color, and if I remove it, then you can see that it is a black and white monitor. I know right now you can't see the screen very well because of all the lighting, because of all the light. But later on, when I show you more gameplay of the system, then yeah. And the humming and also the game brings me now to the next subject, and that is that there are, as far as I know, 6 different variations of the Vectrex available. We have 3 different models and 3 different versions. Now the model that I have right here is the European PAL version of the Vectrex because it's the Milton Bradley version. And the only difference between the PAL, the North American version, and the Bandai version / the Japanese version are actually the sticker on the top here and the stickers on the controller right here and here. The Milton Bradley one, as you can see, has some color to it. You have Vectrex in a blue color, then here we have the buttons 1 to 4 in red, and there's the MB logo also in red and blue, and yeah, also here and on the top. The North American version, the GCE one, has more or less a gray color scheme going on because you have here Vectrex on, the lettering Vectrex right here in gray color. Then you have here some lines in gray and white. Same thing also down here, and on the controller you also have Vectrex in gray letters, and the buttons 1 to 4 are in white. Then the Bandai version has a word written on the top in green and white colors. Looks pretty cool, and also Bandai is in red letterings and so on, so it's also a little bit more colorful like the Milton Bradley version. So those are 3 different models, and the versions are or the differences between the versions are the boot up screens. And I'm gonna turn it off again to show you that I have the second version, because mine says Vectrex GCE Entertaining New Ideas. This is the second version. The first version had only Vectrex on it, and the third version also says only Vectrex. But the difference between the first 2 and the third version are: number 1, the third version are also called non-buzz Vectrex systems because they don't have that buzzing sound anymore, because they added a shielding to the system. And the funny thing about this buzzing is that actually it was a production error during the manufacturing of the system in Hong Kong, because all the prototypes which were made before the system went into manufacturing, none of those had those buzzing sounds. But after they started with the manufacturing of the system, this buzzing sound was created, like I said before, because of the statics which happened between the audio cables and the CRT. And the third version doesn't have that buzzing anymore because they added the shielding. And what's also different about the third version is that the built-in game Mindstorm actually has a bug. It is also called the level 13 bug, because what happens is that in the first two versions, if you get a level 13 and you beat the level, then it will always reset the system, so it will actually crash. And in some rare cases it can also happen that the game will continue, but some strange things will happen and bugs will start to occur, so that, for instance, it can happen that the game skips a couple of levels, or some objects can't be destroyed which you could normally destroy, or something else happens. And in the third version this has a fixed version of the game Mindstorm. And with the first two versions, the funny story about the game Mindstorm, which led to this bug, is that while during the development of the game Mindstorm, they talked about how many levels should they add to this to the game, and all of the employees that worked on the game, the programmers and also some test players, they couldn't get further than level 11. So they thought about, hey, let's add 2 more levels, since our best players can only reach level 11, so nobody will actually reach level 13, and therefore we don't have to make an ending of the game. But only, I guess, a week after the system was released, a couple of people were actually able to reach level 13 and to go even further, but they couldn't because the game crashed. And every person that wrote to GCE or Milton Bradley later on and complained about, hey, my system crashed on me because of this and that, everyone who wrote a letter got in return a free cartridge from GCE or Milton Bradley, which was called Mindstorm and which had a fixed version of the game on it. And when you insert this cartridge to the system and you play it, it actually says at the beginning Mindstorm 2. That's the reason why many people say, yeah, there is a version called Mindstorm 2, but it's actually just the fixed version of the original game. And today this cartridge is pretty rare and very expensive and highly collectible, because not many people back then knew about this bug. GCE and Milton Bradley didn't mention it anywhere, and only if you were a customer back then and you would actually complain about this bug, you would get this cartridge. So this is the reason why it's pretty rare today. And now I'm gonna put back the controller. And before we come to the games and also to the the accessory that I have for the system, which is not much, I just wanted to show you 2 other things on the box of the Vectrex. So this is now the box of my version that I have. This is the system that was sold in Germany and also in Austria, and it also has the German writing on it. And what I found interesting is that the different advertisements of the Vectrex in all the different countries. So in Germany and in Austria it was called Vectrex Video-Unterhaltungssystem, which is translated Video Entertainment System. In the US it was called Vectrex The Arcade System. Then in UK and also in the Netherlands, if I'm not mistaken, it was Vectrex Portable Gaming System. And in France it was called Vectrex Independent Video System. So this is one thing that I find very interesting, that the system was advertised differently in all the countries. And one other thing that I don't really understand is that here on the side we have all the we have all the games that were available at that time or at the beginning. And on the German box / the Austrian box, we have here 2 games that were blacked out. And the funny thing is that none of the Vectrex games were actually censored or anything in Germany or in Austria. And I don't understand why they blacked out those games. And in the end I checked some other boxes, and this game right here would have been Armor Attack, and this game right here would have been Scramble, which you can see up here. And this is a picture of the GC, the North American version, with the gray white lines and with Vectrex right here, and also on the controller, so that you can see how the North American version of the Vectrex looked like. Okay, but next I'm gonna show you, like I mentioned before, some games. I'm gonna show you the different boxes of the games, what came with the games, different overlays, and also some accessories that I have for the Vectrex, and then I'm gonna show you some gameplay of the games. So, games for the Vectrex. Officially there were 28 titles released for the Vectrex. Most of them are games. We have the first one, which is the built-in one, Mindstorm. Then we have 21, let's say, normal games for the system. Then we have 3 titles / programs for the light pen, and 3 3D games. And some of the games were also released in different versions. For instance, this game here was released in North America as Star Trek the Motion Picture Game. In Europe it was called Starship, and if I'm not mistaken, the Japanese version of the game is called Harmageddon. And here we can already see the differences, or I can show you the different boxes of the European and the American version. The European looks more or has a more silver finish than the North American version of the box, even though it is actually a silver color, but it looks more like a very light gray. But this isn't the only game that has or that was released in a different with a different name. Here we have also soccer, football. This is the European version, and the American version was called Heads Up Soccer, or Heads Up Soccer, Heads Up Action Soccer. Then this game right here, Web Wars, was called in Europe Web Warp, and this game here, Flipper Pinball, was called Spinball. And this game, for instance, Clean Sweep, there was also another version available of this game called Mr. Boston Clean Sweep, and this was, I guess, an advertisement gift from the company Mr. Boston. Mr. Boston was, if I'm not mistaken, a liquor company, and they had their logo was a guy with a hat. And in this game, Clean Sweep, which is kind of a clone of Pac-Man, where you normally maneuver a vacuum through a vault, and you try to suck up money in this game. And I don't know if those are guards who are chasing you, but in the end you have to collect money. Your vacuum cleaner grows and grows until he can't suck up any money anymore. Then you have to go into the center of the game. There you get your points for all the money that you collected, and he shrinks down, and then you can continue with collecting all the money. And if you reach one of those corners, then you get special powers, and you can also eat / defeat those guards or whatever they are. And the Mr. Boston version is actually the same game, but instead of a vacuum cleaner, you have a giant, you have a head, and the head collects those dots. And on the box it has here a sticker called Mr. Boston, like the company, and the overlay has also the logo and the name Mr. Boston written on it. And in the game, when you load the game, you get a little extra text which says thank you for buying this game, or shop at Mr. Boston. I don't know it actually. And the cartridge itself has also the logo and the name on it, Mr. Boston. And the Mr. Boston Clean Sweep is actually the rarest and most sought after game on the Vectrex. It is also the most expensive game that you can get on the Vectrex, and it is known to only exist 4 or maybe 6 versions of the game, or copies actually exist, and out of those 4 or 6 versions, only 2 maximum of 4 versions are actually complete with box, with overlay and with cartridge. I can't give you more detailed information because on one hand I've heard there are 4 copies available and only 2 of them are complete. The other source said 6 copies and out of those 6, 4 were actually complete. But in the end, Clean Sweep is a cool game, and the most rarest game for the Vectrex is the Mr. Boston version of Clean Sweep. Okay, but now we continue. I'm gonna show you now what's inside those boxes, and so that you can see the differences between those games. And I'm not sure if all or just some of the games that were released in Japan, if all or some of those were released under a different name, so I can't tell you much about the Japanese versions. But now let's continue. Here we have the cartridge, and here's the rest, manual and overlay, and same thing, American version. So here we have the cartridges, and the cartridge, in terms of size, they are slightly smaller than Atari 2600 cartridges, but in terms of length and thickness they are almost the same, but in terms of height they are a little smaller than Atari 2600 cartridges. Then we have here the manuals, and here we have the overlays. One thing about the overlays that I didn't know when I started with this review, but it's you can read it right here, is that when you bought the games new, the overlays had some protective film on them that you actually had to remove. And when I started with this review, I was going through my entire collection, and I actually found one copy of a game where the protective film was still on there. And for this review I just thought, I'm gonna record myself removing this protective film, just for fun. Okay, but now we continue. So as you can see here on the North American version, on the overlay it says Star Trek The Motion Picture, and here on the European version it says Starship. The rest looks actually very similar. Yeah, the European version is has slightly a different color. It's a little darker blue than the North American version, but in the end there's no difference, or not really a difference at all. And here we have the manuals. The manual for the North American version is slightly smaller, but it has, I guess, almost exactly the same number of pages. But in the end, the North American manual is a lot more detailed than the European version, because in the European version the manual is written in 6 different colors, 6 different languages, as you can see here: English, French, Netherlands, Italian, German and Espanol. And in the end they are not that detailed, but yeah, also cool. Okay, those were the games, or let's say the differences between the North American games and the European games. Then I can continue here with the only 3D game that I have. I can't show you gameplay actually of this game, because in the end the 3D games for the Vectrex, they need the 3D imager, not only because you would only get the 3D effect with the 3D imager, but in the end the game synchronizes the frame rate of the game with the speed of the 3D imager, because there is one extra device in here that normal games don't have. And in the end 3D games never came with an overlay, because they have this here, this color disc, and each 3D game has a different color disc, and the 3D imager works almost the same way as shutter glasses. So this disc normally spins in front of you inside the 3D imager, and this is the thing that has to synchronize with the game. So in the end, if I insert this game to the Vectrex and try to load it, the boot up screen will come, and more or less the game screen of the game, but the game will not start because I don't have a 3D imager, and therefore it can't synchronize the frame rate, and therefore it stops completely. So this is also one thing that I can't show you. And yeah, same thing, since the 3D games were only released in North America. Yeah, we only have here the manual for the North American or of the North American version, and yeah, here the game, and the 3D games came with this color disc. So, and yeah, on the back here I can show you also the 2 screenshots. Actually, for the 3D imager, 4 games were announced, and yeah, this is one of those 4 games, but only 3 were released. This is one game. The 3D imager came with a version of 3D Mindstorm. So this was the second game, but it was already included with the 3D imager. Then the third game was called Crazy Coaster, and the 4th game that was announced was 3D Pole Position. So it was a 3D version of this game. But as far as I know, it was never finished, and I don't even know or think that it was finished by the community or is available today for the Vectrex, but I could be wrong. And yeah, now we come to the light pen. And as I already mentioned, the light pen was released in North America, but also in a couple of countries in Europe, and this is the France version. But in the end, they also got the North American version. The only thing that changed was they put a sticker on the front of the box, and they also included an extra French manual, because here we have the the English manual, or the manual from the North American version. And the light pen came with the program Artmaster, which is a drawing program. Here we have the light pen. Today you can also get modified light pens, or let's say new light pens for the system. And yeah, this is, like I said, this is the French translated manual, which was also included in here. And on the back, on the back of the box, also here were 4 programs announced for the light pen / for the Vectrex, but only 3 were released. Artmaster came with the light pen, then there was Melody Master and Anim Action. Mail Plane was never released officially. It was almost finished, but then the Vectrex was discontinued. Today you can actually get a working version of Mail Plane, because one person inside the homebrew community completed the prototype, and yeah, like I said, today you can actually get a version of Mail Plane. And I also have the other 2 programs for the light pen. Here we have Melody Master. Some screenshots. Also, those were actually the North American copies of the program. And here, as you can see, since they were released in France, they put a sticker on it on the bottom. But yeah, they are not in the best shape or anything. And just to show you what was all inside those boxes, because also the light pens never came with an overlay, of course not, because you actually had to draw with the light pen on the screen. But since they were also released in France, here we have the normal manual of the North American version, and here we also have a translated French version. Or is this? Actually not. No, I guess this is France. But I could be wrong. I was wrong before, so why not? Yeah, your Melody Master and Anime Action. Yeah, it's an animation program / a drawing program, also with Art Master, the game that was in, or program that was included with the light pen. You could also make some basic animation, and this was more or less a more advanced version or more advanced program. And also this came with cartridge, of course, and with the manual, or in this case with two manuals, because also here we have the North American manual and one translated one. Okay, this was the light pen programs, and in the end light pen was one of the few accessories that were available for the system. This is actually the one other one, an extra controller. Like I said before, I don't have the 3D imager, so I can't show you that. And in the end, only 4 accessories were released for the Vectrex. So you had an extra controller, you had the 3D imager, you had the light pen, and the last accessory, if you actually want to call this, that was released for the Vectrex was a carrying bag, which had Vectrex on it, and which should have been used for if you wanted to carry the Vectrex around, that yeah, you don't scratch the screen or whatever. So this was also one accessory that was available. And just for the, also gonna show you the box of an extra controller. This is also a controller which was released in Europe. It's in very good condition, but I don't think that this is actually brand new, but this is how they were released. And for me it's actually kind of funny, because a working controller in very good condition can actually cost you more than a complete system with controller. But this is also something that I'm gonna tell you at the end of this review, because then I'm also gonna talk about prices that you can expect if you are interested in buying a Vectrex or the games or some accessory for the system. But next I'm gonna show you some gameplay of some of the games that I have for the system, and I'm also gonna show you the light pen in action, but I'm only going to show you 2 of the programs that I have for the light pen.